Welcome to the Grow Through Recovery podcast. My name is Ken. This podcast is about mental health, recovery, addiction, grief, and life in general. It's real talk about what it looks like to keep moving forward when your nervous system, your brain, or your past just led to a constant state of fight or flight. And over the span of time, we'll touch on many different topics. In today's episode, I want to touch briefly on my own journey, especially with ADHD, the years of wondering what was wrong with me, and the moment I found a dangerous way to finally make it all quiet. If you have ever felt like you didn't know how to navigate life or felt like you were missing the tools that everybody else seemed to have, you're in the right place. So I spent the first part of my life feeling like my brain was a radio tuned to 500 different stations at once. And I'd spent years after that trying to drown out the noise with whatever substance I could find. Growing up, I didn't have a name for what that was. I didn't know what was happening inside of my head. I didn't know about executive function or intrusive thoughts or cognitive distortions, rejection sensitivity, or any of that stuff. I was just a little kid. I only knew that I was different somehow. And now that I look back, I know that I wasn't the only one. I remember being in classrooms or out in public, even at home, and feeling like an outsider. I couldn't follow instructions the way I was expected to. And I think the hardest part wasn't the struggle itself. It was the constant negative BS from teachers and bosses and even people that were close to me, being called lazy, unmotivated, and my personal favorite, useless. And when you're a kid, you don't question that. You internalize it. And those words become the software that your brain starts running on. And I spent a long time just trying to feel level. My first real experience with alcohol wasn't planned. I wasn't trying to cope or escape. I was just being a rebellious kid, stealing my parents' beer. But after a couple of them, I noticed that the chaos in my head would turn down a few notches. The world stopped feeling like a constant barrage of sensory input and started to feel somewhat manageable. I remember thinking, this is how everyone else feels all the time. And at first it felt like it was a gift. But that trap of self-medication is that the medicine eventually becomes the poison. That off switch that I'd found turned out to be a brick wall eventually. So the thing that I used to navigate the world slowly became the thing that cut me off from it. Interestingly, coffee of all things ended up being what led to my ADHD diagnosis decades later. I drank a lot of coffee. I always wanted to get that jolt that everybody talked about, that burst of energy that was supposed to make the day manageable. It never came for me. It just slowed me down. My body would get tired, but my brain would keep on racing. And sometimes I'd drink a cup and feel like I needed a nap. It was during an intake, I believe, for trauma therapy. I casually mentioned that coffee always made me tired. I can't even recall how we got on the topic of coffee. And the next thing I know, I walked out with an ADHD diagnosis as a bonus. And honestly, it explained a lot. It was a turning point for me. But it didn't just explain my past. It forced me to look at something else that I'd been doing for most of my life, and that was masking. Masking is what happens when you learn, usually early on, that being yourself is not safe or acceptable. So you study people. You copy behaviors. You hide your confusion, your overwhelm, your emotions, just to get through the day. And you end up becoming pretty good at it too. I didn't realize at the time, but I built an entire identity around fitting in. And when I started unmasking, I had to relearn so much. I think emotionally and mentally, I was basically a 12-year-old, the age I'd been at when I first learned to mask. And taking that mask off was both liberating and brutal. It didn't come with instant clarity. It didn't come with everything was great after that. It came with grief and embarrassment, with realizing how much you survived without understanding what was happening to you. And that's something I'll be diving deeper into in the next episode, because masking plays a huge role in burnout, addiction, and why so many people don't really feel like they know who they are. It took me a long time to realize that motivation wasn't enough. If I wanted to move forward, I needed discipline. I needed accountability. I needed the ability to look back at my past self and say, man, that guy had no idea what he was doing. I had to make amends with the people that I hurt. And most importantly, I think I had to feel compassion for the kid that just had to adapt to try to survive. And this is where I'm going to bring up advocacy. We need to be honest about this. There's so many people with mental health challenges, ADHD, and other neurodivergent traits. And we reach for the alcohol and substances naturally, not because of a lack of character, but because we're searching for regulation in a world that was not built with us in mind. Some of the people I've grown closest to, people who share these same traits, are among the most intelligent, creative, and empathetic humans I've ever known. So until we advocate for systems that understand the way addiction works, until we can see the person before judging the bottle, the substance, or the behavior, and until support systems are actually designed to help people regulate and heal, we'll just be spinning our wheels. I want to continue this conversation in the podcast group on the Growth Through Recovery website. I started a thread called Labels We Carry. And if you want, go there and post even one word, the label you were given as a kid that stuck with you, the one that you're still trying to unlearn. And let's put those words into the open and look at them for what they are, misunderstandings. Share your story if you want, or send me a private message. We're building a community and building a map for those people coming up behind us so that they don't have to spend a good portion of their lives thinking they're broken or wired wrong. There was never anything wrong with me, and there was never anything wrong with you. Now we're just learning to manage it. And if this resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to the podcast and follow along. And we'll be digging deeper into so many of these issues and how they affected us and how they tie into recovery and addiction and all that good stuff too. But until then, keep your head up, keep moving forward, my friends.